What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Agave and Cactus Talk. Today out walking the goats, and we don't have much wind again, which is pretty rare as of recent. So I haven't been putting too many podcasts out, but today we got a little lucky. So we'll do a continuation of the last podcast, which was 20 ways, what do you call it? To make or save money with the agave you farm, right? So we're starting on number 11 now. The other podcast was 1 through 10. So number 11, right off the bat, is, you can use your agave to, grind it up and mix with animal manures if you have cows or sheep or goats, and in combination the grinded agave plus a little bit composted manure, you can throw that in a biodigester. So there's various ones that you can buy. I had a kind of cheapy one that I bought for I think it was like $1,200, and that one worked pretty well. You can throw the agave grindings in there and the manure and stuff, and it works pretty well. And then you can hook up your own, cooking utensils or heating or whatever to that, because it has like a little knob for you to hook a line to, kind of like propane. And yeah, I wanted you to start to get familiar with biodigesters, because while there are some pretty simple ones and it's kind of a new concept, as I've spoken in the other podcasts, in India they are working on some pretty sizable biodigesters, combining cow manures with I think it was cactus or agave, I don't remember exactly, it might have been both. But they're basically making a 90-10, so 90% agave and 10% manure. And they started with the reverse, a 90% manure and 10% agave. But they found out how to balance it correctly to where the biodigester works with that quantity now. And they're getting really efficient biomethane, right? So they're able to use that biomethane, as I mentioned, for all types of stuff. What I'd like to do here in the USA is, get some permitting and try to set up a biomethane plant, essentially, to where a small city could basically produce its own heating and, its own propane. Because a lot of the propane tanks that you see at the gas station, at the Home Depot, everywhere that you can fill up, a lot of that's coming from, other states and a lot of other countries, right? So if we could have a natural gas resource that is localized, that's big time, right? That would be a really profitable venture for someone. I'll probably want to do that in the future. But definitely billions of dollars there that are not being tapped. Because if you're able to put it into small propane tanks or into tankers, you can now move that all over the U.S., all over the world, and you got yourself a nice little energy company growing, ideally dry farming the agave and cactus and a lot of the animals using rainwater. So yeah, number 11 would be to use a biodigester to create your own biomethane. Lots of opportunities there, as I just explained. So number 12 is going to be processing the leaves and fiber, drying it, and just selling the fiber. This is something that's really popular in Africa and Brazil, and I'm not too sure what they're utilizing it for in Brazil, but I know in Africa they're utilizing it for all types of textiles, clothes, and mantles and, you know, blankets and really fancy garments and stuff too. But yeah, you can start your own clothing company if you want. You know, I think I've spoken before on the podcast about how agave is a really breathable clothing material, and it's great to work in. You know, it reflects a lot of the sun and is very durable. So, you know, when you're washing it, it doesn't break down like a lot of other materials. So it could be something there, you know, maybe a clothing company. Maybe you don't want to vertically integrate right away. You just sell the fiber to someone who might start a clothing company. So you might want to outreach to people who would like to, you know, buy that fiber on a consistent basis, like some textile companies. You know, my girlfriend's working on, hey, vete para allá, America, some crochet with agave, sisal fiber. So, you know, there's all types of stuff you can make. I mean, I'm trying to do something like that and make myself a little beanie, you know. I'm trying to get me an agave beanie. But, you know, get creative, get inventive, and see what you can use the fiber for. Another big use there for the fiber that I speak about quite a bit is the construction use. So, utilizing that fiber for non-structural concrete reinforcement. So, you know, put it this way, like the frame of your home, right? Like the columns and the corners and all the beams and stuff, that's like what's structural, right? But all the walls, all the floor, all the siding, all of this stuff could be, you know, agavecrete, basically, which is agave fiber taking, you know, sometimes 1 to well, I think they even went as high as 3%, but, you know, concrete is a multi-billion-dollar industry, so even utilizing 1 to 3% agave in a concrete product is pretty significant. But yeah, in terms of a home, it can very much be like hemp, so it could be the siding, it could be turned into planks and stuff, and sort of like plywood for subfloor. It could be the, you know, with the stalks, you could utilize that for making actual planks for the top floor, you know, the finish. You could use, you know, the fiber pressed to use as insulation. You know, there's all types of ways that it could be used in construction, and obviously this is what I always remind people: the tequila and mezcal industry, even if you're giving them some leeway and they're like a $13-15 billion industry, that ain't shit. I mean, there's some construction companies that are like, you know, $50 billion siding companies, or, you know, flooring companies or whatever, right? So if you make a product that hits with the market, that could be way larger than getting your little piece of the spirits market. And once again, I love spirits. I like making them and shit. I'm not saying don't make spirits, but if the day comes where spirits is not profitable for you, there's a whole bunch of other ways to be profitable. So don't get bummed out and try to sell your shit for cheap and go out of business. So that's my job here as a consultant and with the podcast, to try to help you be a little more profitable and knowledgeable. So yeah, number 12, processing the leaves into fiber, right? So number 13, planting agave as a windbreak and firebreak, you know, basically as a perimeter. So planting agave as a perimeter, you're going to have a lot of benefits there. You're going to have, you know, some windbreak. They can get very tall and they're perennial, so they can last for a long time. Many of the agaves could be 10, 12 feet tall, you know, so they're pretty significant windbreak in their later years. And they also are a fire deterrent and firebreak, so it's not like they're going to stop a ember fire that happened in Altadena, but it slows down the fire, and they aren't really flammable, so all the water in them is kind of just, steaming out, you could say, during a fire, preventing that fire from going in so quickly, right? So what this allows is maybe the firefighters a chance to save your home or your property or whatever, right? Or you to do that, or the fire to change direction to where there's more fuels. So the fire is pretty much alive and moves wherever there's more fuel. So if it comes up against a big ass wall of agave and cactus, it might try to go somewhere else, which is what I saw a lot in Altadena. A lot of perimeter of agave and cactus was spared, and it looked like those properties had a little bit less damage. Like I said, it probably won't stop the fire, but it gives you a little bit room to fight. And they also, in terms of privacy, they're obviously going to serve keeping nosy people out, eyes out. But in the end, too, they're going to keep people out, like, just physically, right? People aren't going to want to hop your fence when there's a fucking fence of agave and cactus there, because they're going to get injured. So, for instance, if you put a block wall and you put glass all up top, you're like, and somebody gets injured on your property, they can sue you, because that's illegal. But if you got a bunch of agave and cactus on the perimeter of your property, it's a plant. They can't say shit. So it's a little loophole. Anyway, okay, we're going to number 14. Right. So number 14, this one here is making distillates from the quiote. So I've read about how the indigenous people here in California used Dacillarion Willeri and a couple different plants like that. I still haven't read a case of agave being used that way, but they're in the same family. This is where I'm going. So the Dacillarion, or not Dacillarion, the Hesperoeuca whippley, my bad. That's the one I'm talking about. That's a U.S. native, California native here, LA native. Well, that plant was made into a lot of wine, and that's what inspired me to distill it, right? Well, because if you can make wine, you can make spirits. But my whole thing was this: when I was doing a lot of the research, I came upon this 80-page research paper, and this lady, put all the research into, one paper. It was dope, because I just, nerded out about it. But she mentioned how they were making wine out of the flower stalks. And I was like, this is fucking dope. I'd like to learn. And then I was researching how they would grind it all up and basically ferment the flower stalks much like you would the piñas. And they made, wines and different stuff from it, right? So if you can make a wine, you can make a fermentable, type of spirit from it, right? And that might be something that's exciting, making a spirit out of only the flower stalk, right? Because people in Mexico have made out of the agave flower stalk wine, and in the USA with the Hesperoeucas, maybe some other species in between, but those two countries confirmed. And I'm like, got something there, because a lot of people don't even let the quiote go to bloom. But one thing I've been telling a lot of people is that there's a way to balance the harvest of the piña, the harvest of the seed, and the viewable. So, you might get a little less piña, a little less of the seed and viewable, but getting all three is definitely better because it gives you more options. So you might get, a larger piña if you don't let the quiote come out, or you might get a larger quiote if you let the piña completely get absorbed by it. But there is a balance where you could get a little of each. So, play with your agaves once you get an amount that you can do stuff like that. So yeah, that was number 14, utilizing the flower stalks to make some type of wine or distillates. Number 15, selling the agave leaf skin. So this is one a lot of people don't know about. Damn it, I should have came prepared with the name, because it's this super cool name. But so if you finally, how should I describe this? It's it looks almost like a film. If you cut the agave leaf in a certain way, and you got the film of the agave leaf, you can do certain cuisines with that, right? Certain wraps, and it's really, good. So a lot of people utilize that. That's something, a lot of people just throwing away their leaves. You can look to restaurants to sell that, this is why I should have had the name, but it's, I would call it an agave leaf skin, basically. So sell your leaf skins to different people, different restaurants and stuff, Now number 16, we'll go to selling the agave roots. So a lot of people don't know that the agave roots are also, full of nutrients and can be used for various different medicinal use and also for consumption. So you can cook them, obviously, but apparently, I haven't delved too deep into it, but I've heard from enough people the same thing that, I should mention it, that there are a lot of medicinal uses from the agave root. Not sure what those uses would be at the moment, but maybe something I'll look into, because the roots definitely are something that's providing a lot of value. And, if you could sustainably harvest the roots without damaging too much the agave during its life, it might be worthwhile exploring that resource as well. Let's see here. Number 17, creating your own hybrids. So, if you got two of your favorite agaves, why not at the end of their life let them bloom and let them hybridize, right? If you let them hybridize, you can now get a whole new agave that you could potentially patent and control the genetics of. Not only that, that might be, expensive or whatever. You might not want to do that. Most people don't do that. But here's the better part. You might create an agave that is uniquely tuned to your locale, but just looks really cool and other people want to buy it, right? So whatever new that you create, you never know how the market will receive it. And it might be that you create the new hot agave that people really, really want. And then if you control the genetics, and you only have the genetics, you could potentially take that to a lab, tissue culture it, and replicate it by, whatever amount you want. And then you can, have a whole bunch of this agave that's your agave that you could sell, right? And you could create different batches of it, for different climates. You can, hybrids. You can create different, hybrids for as in terms of climate, for the cold, for the heat, for the wind, for a place that's really, really wet all the time. That's where you have to start looking at your fields and seeing which agaves are prospering under which conditions and taking notes. Because those are going to be the agaves that you really want to keep for genetics and for crossing and utilize those traits that they've demonstrated over their lifetime, right? So, hybrids is something that's really fun. Even if you don't make any money at it, it's just cool being able to create an agave that's, you can say, hey, I made this, Yeah. And little by little, I think we're going to get to making more and more different plants. It just takes some time, obviously, because all these agaves to hybridize, it takes a long, long time. I had to pause to get my goats. Yeah. So the hybrids is really cool. I mean, I think I've discussed too, creating your own genetics could be really cool if you patent it, because then you can kind of create your own normal and be like, no, you can only use permaculture and you can't use pesticides, you can't use chemicals. Like, you could do the, what do you call it? Just for lack of words here, dictatorship the good way, You just make people, if they want to utilize your genetics, do it the right way. That's something that probably hasn't been applied ever, but it'd be interesting. I mean, I definitely have seen, the Mangave patents, like people pay royalties to grow them. A lot of them, in mass. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do with the agave genetics. Let's put it that way, because you can make different hybrids, even triple hybrids. You can make interspecies hybrids. You can fucking cross agave with Manfreda and make mangaves. You can cross agave with maybe potentially Fucrea or Destillarion, Hespero Yucca. It's been crossed with like this other genus called like Polyanthus, something like that. I'm not too sure how to pronounce that shit, but like it's kind of like more of a flower. It's not even really like kind of like the agave, more like this bigger succulent plant, you know. And point is, there's lots of other plants that you could hybridize it with. The great legend Hans, you know, over there making all kinds of fucking cool shit, triple hybrids and stuff. I mean, you know, if you want these plants, you got to go to him, right? Because he's creating them all the time. And you could potentially be a nursery or a farm that does something like that. Never know where this agave thing will lead you to. I'm over here growing a bunch of California native plants and cactus, and I just wanted to grow agave. It's fucking crazy where this shit leads you. Because to make the agave prosper, I need to grow more California natives to go in between my agave and more cactus. And now I'm growing trees. And it's like, all this was just to grow agave. But it's like, to grow anything correctly, you need to do a bunch of shit, you know? It's the same with the animals. It's like, you know, after the first cycle of agave, I really changed everything. But, okay, let's go to number 18, right? So, creating new farms with the plants you propagate, you know, through seed, bubel, hijuelo, whatever, recycle them like me. You can take all these plants and do what I do. You know, I'm giving y'all the fucking blueprint, man. Take that plant, you know, like I'm just gonna, you know, tell it like it is, man. I mean, I've installed a couple of farms here in Lancaster, California, and you know, I'll sell them my agave, I'll sell them the irrigation, I'll sell them trees and cactus and all types of stuff. But here we're talking about the agave, right? It's like you can become a consultant, and now that you've learned and grown all these agave species for a bunch of years, you can now try to sell that plant, right, to other farmers who are already farming or maybe trying to get into farming that are looking for a new crop. And agave fits that bill. So, you know, the example here would be I installed, you know, 2,000 plants that I grew. So I grew those seeds I collected from a wild bloom. Most of them, say from like 10 blooms actually, because there was a bunch of shit that I started. I had like 12 species in this farm. And all of those, or they were hijuelos from stuff I recycled. But the point is, you know, or bulbs, the point is I recycled or grew it, right? So the money was all pretty much, you know, a win for me, because I got the product for free, or I grew it for minimal value. And a lot of these plants I was selling 5 gals at 15 to 20 bucks, sometimes 10 bucks, different farm depending how many they bought, you know. And I would sell them, say the agaves, 1,000 agaves, 15K. And then, you know, I'd sell them management, I'd sell them consulting, sell them irrigation if they needed it. You know, a lot, whatever they didn't need or they didn't want to do, I did, you know. But in your case, you might just want to sell the agave. The point is, start all these new agave farms with these plants, right? And you can utilize your plants to make more money. Because like a landscaper, right? Like I'm a landscaper too. We take plants from the nursery and we sell them for double to make some profit, right? That's the whole point of a business. But in this case, I was the farm and I took my own plant and planted it and I can sell a lot more plants at a lot cheaper price. Because if I'm buying a $15 plant from the nursery, I'm going to sell it for like 25 or 30. So I can provide a $15 plant, $10 plant to a lot of the clients because I grew it and make all the profit, right? So that's the cool part behind a lot of that stuff, that you're going to be able to make new farms with all of this agave. And then if you're growing a cacti and California natives like I am too, sell them on that shit too. That's what I've been doing. Because most of them want to copy my permaculture style of farming, right? So my goal here is to just tell you, right, don't just think about selling the plant, because if you go install it, you're going to charge more to plant it, obviously, right? So I sold them the agave, say, for 15, and then a couple bucks each on top to plant it, right? Depending on how much they were, sometimes, like in the big deals, I'll only charge like $1 or $2 because I'm planting so many of them, right? But the point is, you charge them for planting too, and you make an extra money there. And essentially, you know, through a lot of those selling of the plants and the installation, you can make an extra revenue, right? Extra money that you might not be able to get from, what do you call it, just selling the piñas, right? Because everybody thinks the only money that you can make from agave is selling the piñas, and that's just incorrect, to be honest. You know, there's so many different ways. I mean, I've tried every single one because I'm just a curious person, but there's a lot of ways, man. There's a lot of ways. You know, let's go on to the next one. Fucking goats always taking my breath away. Number 18. This one's gonna be an interesting one, but so I read this article that we talked about. Maybe, I don't know if I released that podcast, but about carbon credits for cactus farming. We talked about how this company was all bullshit, selling the carbon credits, but you can actually do it legit, you know. You don't have to do a monoculture of cactus bullshit like they are. But check it out. You can start a permaculture agave farm, right? Plant trees, shrubs, keep the natives, whatever. You got your animals and shit. Well, that's going to be locking a certain amount of carbon every single year, right? Stay with me. You can measure that. There's lots of different grant programs and literal payment programs, like non-government, like just NGO, like government, you know, organizations. And these fuckers will literally pay you to lock the carbon in the soil, right? That's why that company I told you in Africa is trying to spend billions planting a monoculture of cactus to try to scam them into buying the carbon credits. But you can actually do it legit, and then you can actually fucking lock carbon in. Not monoculture farming, but doing something legit. And then you can work with different universities or measure it, you know, in a scientific way on your own. You know, do it legit. And you can now start to fucking sell those carbon credits, right? So say, just for instance, you're locking in 1,000 tons of carbon every single year. Every single ton of carbon has a fixed cost on the market globally. And you can buy that, right? Like, look at California's cap and trade program. It works very similar to that, right? Like, big companies get only a certain amount of credits, and then if you're a big company like Tesla and you're, you know, maybe that's a controversial model, but, you know, maybe you're a solar company, fucking, you know, where you don't need all those carbon credits, and you sell them off. And they have gone up extremely in value in California because of the cap and trade program lowering the amount every year that there is, right? So in economics, in theory, you lower the supply, price should go up. It's kind of what has been working in California. But I think that's going to work now globally in a lot of places. They're going to be putting in these cap and trade programs, and farmers, instead of being hated on as fucking all these, it's because the problem is, when places like the UK, these assholes are trying to ban farmers, the problem is this, that they're trying to ban industrial farming, but they mix everybody into the loop, right? Because, yeah, I mean, a CAFO or a centralized animal feed operation, yeah, that shit's super polluting, man. But you look at, cows or sheep or goats being rotationally grazed, how I'm doing it, and that's improving the ecosystem, locking more carbon in the soil, right? So they kind of fucked everyone by lumping us all together, because now everybody thinks the farmers are bad and stuff because of all this BS media, and farmers aren't the problem. They're actually the solution. We should be paying farmers that are doing permaculture, dry farming, all this, for locking the carbon in, because if we incentivize that, these systems will be incentivized, and then they'll go everywhere, and these farmers will actually become more profitable. So that, it just is a self-reinforcing cycle. That shit was dope. I don't understand why they don't do that, But yeah, carbon credits sales, definitely one that I think is being severely undervalued or underutilized. I mean, even when I saw that cactus article selling cactus credits, that was like a surprise to me. That's why I made a podcast on it. But get before the fucking race, man. Try to fucking start selling the credits now before anybody even is thinking about that shit, man. There's lots of opportunity there. And there's billions of dollars in many, many countries of carbon credits, many governments, many big organizations. If you could directly measure your carbon, and you can go and tell fucking Apple, I got, 10,000 tons of carbon credits that I'd like you to sponsor or pay me for, I'm pretty sure there's like a fucking good chance that they'd be like, they'd at least hear you out, man. And it's kind of like business. You try 1,000 companies, I bet one is going to hit of those big guys, and you only need one to make a big difference. So, point being, a lot of these farmers that are being paid for carbon sequestration are actually quite profitable. And that's what I'd like for California one day, for more profitability for its farmers that way. Not sure if it's something that's gonna be possible, like I mentioned, because in the USA, everybody thinks the carbon credits are a scam or some shit, but they're definitely not. So what are we on now? Number 20. So this is one that after Athena I was thinking about, because agave are also heavy metal sequestrators. So you could potentially grow metal or grow agave in an area that has heavy metal contamination like Altadena. And, once again, you measure at the beginning and then you measure at the end of their life, and then you could essentially prove to people that they've harvested a lot of this metal in the ground, heavy metals, and, you could potentially sell that service to governments, or to different property owners, or, a mix of agave and other different type of heavy metal absorbing plants, right? Like different types of fungi and stuff. So that's something I thought about, soil remediation using agave, basically. And I think it's something that, warrants an entrepreneur to check it out. So number 21, little bono. I think it's a great idea to look to NGOs in the government that are working on restoration, right? So if you have, for instance, agave showy in California, there are people working on restoration projects in California where you can insert that agave showy, either, for instance, you can get the money either in a few ways, right? I mean, you could potentially donate $1,000 worth of agave to a restoration project that's a non-profit and get a tax write-off, right? and then you get $500 off your taxes or whatever, right? Whatever the rate is for you. You could potentially sell the agave to large restoration projects that have a little bit more funding, and you could potentially sell, say you sell 1,000 agave showy at $10 each, you got 10K right there, right? The same with Utahensis in the Las Vegas area. Really big development, just taking them all out. So I mean, there's ways to use the agave to restore landscapes, right, where they're native, and you can do that with agave decipiens in Florida. There's a lot of development. In Texas, a lot of development. You could use Havardiana, you could use Americana, you could use fuck, I'm forgetting the other ones right now. Chrysanthem. There's lots of different agaves that you could fucking utilize in Texas because there's many that are native there. And those are the largest USA agaves. Everything's bigger in Texas. So yeah, growing the agaves that are native in your area, or thinking about growing agaves that are native. For instance, like here I've got agaves from the whole Southwest, from Texas and Florida. If those areas needed agave for restoration projects and I had it, I could potentially ship it out to them, right? So there's, think about restoration and growing natives not only for your state, but maybe for other places too, right? So, yeah, obviously if they fit within your program, right? Like, don't go out there and try to grow a bunch of fucking, Central Mexican agave that's getting 30 inches of rain and you're living in the Mojave like me, right? So, yeah, that was 21. That's a little bonus. This episode was a little bit shorter. I think the first 10 was like, I made it 10 ways, right, at first, and then I thought of like 11 other ways, and I was like, you know what, we should just make it 20. But the first 10 were like the big ones that I think people should look at, but these are other ones that I thought of after I was already making that podcast, like as I was thinking. Or writing it down and stuff before I recorded it. So if you got another way, put it in the comments on YouTube or Podbean or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever, and then other people will see it. I probably won't see it. I don't know how to look at all the comments, man. I need to like get one page where they're all there, because it's hard for me to go to like every platform and check them out every day or whatever. But yeah, there's lots of ways to make money with agave. Don't get bummed out if you're not able to get a good price for your piñas. Make sure that you don't sell just to sell, and you get some money that allows you to continue farming and developing yourself as an individual and your farm. So that's why I put this podcast out. So you got 20 new ways that you could explore and look at for profiting with your agave and your agave farm. And yeah, have a great rest of the day, everyone. I'll catch y'all later. Agave and Cactus Talk podcast out.